Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Budio's Boy Wrestling fan interview. Today I'm joined by my very special guest, referee Kris Levin. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. Pretty good. It's Monday, so I really don't know what to say about that. How are you doing during this pandemic? Safe, healthy, all that?
I appreciate you asking me. Generally, I'm doing pretty well. I'm keeping super busy, and it's been driving me nuts lately how busy it's been. You think
Mhm.
pandemic would be the time that you'd have some off time, but nope. I managed to find a way to keep at it. How about yourself?
Same. Doing these interviews, watching wrestling on any streaming service that I can. Just trying to stay active, but also stay social distancing from other people.
Oh, yeah,
So,
absolutely, absolutely.
how long have you been in the wrestling business for?
I started in it's actually 13 years, just about to the day now. I started. The first independent wrestling event I ever went to was It was a Halloween event in 2007, and so we're just coming up. And right immediately after that, I joined up at their school and was helping them out. I was the ring boy. I would help clean up, help set up chairs, put up posters, help set up the ring, and whenever it was a slow day or I would be one of the ones. I would show up early, I would stay late, and someone would be there and they would have no one to wrestle with. None of the other students would arrive, so they pull me in and they teach me that, or they teach me this, and that's kind of how it all started. But yeah, so just about exactly 13 years to the day.
Now, did you always want to be a referee official, or did you want to be a professional wrestler?
Um, when I was in high school and when I was younger, I mean, I started when I was in high school, when I was 15, but, um, you have these like idle daydreams of, I want to do this, I want to do that. And you don't really think about the practical reality behind it. You just think about I want to do it. And once I got in there and was trained to wrestle, I quickly realized it wasn't meant for me. Like I'm built like a baby bird, so I just can't handle all of that. And don't get me wrong, like I've wrestled matches. I sometimes, not now during this pandemic, but in better times, I would still go to schools and work out and whatnot. Uh, but yeah, just the high frequency of bumps and whatnot, just it's not for me. So I contribute in what ways I can.
Now, referee officiating is what it's called. Is way
Hmm.
different from wrestling. I mean, you definitely learn because you got to learn the moves and you got to stay out of the way of the wrestlers.
Hmm.
What have you been doing to stay in shape for your refereeing skills during this
Uh,
pandemic?
I'm someone, so I know this is going to shock a lot of people, but I'm not big into weightlifting. I'm more of like I do yoga every day. I jog a lot. I in the warmer months, I live out on the shore, so I go to the beach or to the pool. So swimming a lot, things like that.
Nice, nice. Now, you are above the age of 18, correct? Because some people might be watching this interview and think that you look a little young. So,
Yes, I'm very far above the age of 18. I'm closer to 30 than I am 18. I wish I was closer to 18.
now, what are some of the promotions that you have worked for in your career?
I was with Impact for a couple of years. I was with Ring of Honor for a bit just prior to that. I'm with Game Changer Wrestling, ICW No Holds Barred. MLW and I work together a lot. Camp Leapfrog, of course. There's been so many. It's like an alphabet soup over the years. I keep track of every single match I've ever officiated. Actually, I'm just about to hit 2,500 sometime in the
Wow,
next few months. So it's been a lot over the years.
that's a big number.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny that you mentioned Camp Leaf Frog,
Hmm.
and that's actually something that you came up with. Can you tell me and the fans that are watching this interview what is Camp Leaf Frog?
Absolutely. So, High Tension Wrestling, they run out in Pennsylvania, and they were going to have their first ever event in May. And obviously, that didn't happen because of the pandemic. So they'd known that I've been aside from refereeing, I've been involved with a lot of event producing and promoting and things like that over across the indies over the years. and they hit me up and asked if I was interested in producing an event with them. Uh, they kind of figured, hey, if anyone knows how to put wrestling together in a pandemic, it would be Kris. And we looked into it, and we spent a couple months trying to figure out how to do it safely, who would even be interested in all of that. And while we were doing that, the idea of Camp Leapfrog came along, which is they have this big, beautiful place up in out in Pennsylvania, and it's like on all these acres of land. And looking at it, it's like, wow, this looks like a campground. And I was watching a cartoon that was out before you were born. Even it was called As Told by Ginger. I was just doing a rewatch of it recently with my girlfriend, and they had a campground episode, and it was so much fun. It was wow. It's like all these themes that you think of when you think of like the quintessential like childhood moments of like being at a campground, of being with your friends, and all these big life experiences happening there. It's like, wow, imagine if we could create a wrestling event that made people feel the same way. And kind of all of that came together, and it was like, let's make Camp Leapfrog. So it's a pro wrestling campground, which we have wrestling matches on these, but it's also part cinematic. And like, there's always going to be a scene that explains the match. There's never just going to be wrestling for wrestling's sake. It's a tongue-in-cheek unfolding story throughout the event. And we ran our first event. It aired in early September, and our new one's coming up this Thursday called Camp Leapfrog Things That Go Bump in the Ring, which is going to be our Halloween-themed event.
Now, where can people watch the show?
Sure. So people can watch that on IWTV. That's Independent Wrestling TV. And if you don't have it, I don't know why you don't. It's awesome. It's like it's an award-winning network, and it's just like the WWE network, but instead of WWE, it's the independents. And there's plenty of stuff from the United States, Mexico, Canada, Japan, and it's great because independent wrestling is the lifeblood. It's the grassroots of the professional wrestling business as a whole. I know that years ago when I was a fan and watching wrestling, a lot of the guys that a lot of the men and women that I watched are now huge stars on TV. And there's no reason for me to think that it's going to be any different now. I mean, already you see so many of the people on TV now are the ones that I came up with or I worked alongside, and it's going to be no different now with all of the current crop of talent you see on IWTV. You're going to see them on TV soon. So tune in, watch the future as they're figuring things out. And the great thing about IWTV, it's cheap. It's only $10 a month, but if you're not sure, they have a special going on where if you use promo code Leapfrog to sign up, you can get 5 days free to watch Camp Leapfrog live, what premieres on Thursday at 8, as well as just anything you want to check out for those 5 days. And I don't know many people who have tried out IWTV and not continued to use it. I know I personally use it quite often. It's a ton of fun.
Now, who are some of the wrestlers that you have officiated a match with that have made it big in wrestling now that went to higher companies?
Oh, so many. So many. Sammy Callahan helped train me, of course. Plenty of talent I worked alongside at Impact who were already famous or just on the way to becoming famous. Um, a lot of guys who are with AEW now, the MJFs, the Orange Cassidys. I came up in the business with Santana and Ortiz. We've known each other since we were practically teenagers. Joey Janela is another one I've known since we were both teenagers. The list goes on and on, but there's so many.
Now, as I tested you during our DMs on Twitter of explaining how the show works, I said that I like to have surprises, and it's mainly about having fun. Now, unfortunately, one of the surprises that I had planned didn't go according to plan because she was busy, so it's okay. But when I do my research for my guests, I found out a lot. Can you tell us about the time that you were on the Murray Show?
Oh, the Maury Show. Okay, so there's a ring announcer and commentator and event producer himself named MLJ, who's worked with CZW and GCW and just a ton of indies. and I've he's one of my oldest friends in pro wrestling. He grew up 20 minutes from me. We got into the business around the same time. He was maybe a year and a half later, but the same promotion, Force One Pro Wrestling in South Jersey. And Emil is one of the smartest people I know, one of the funniest people I know, and he just has a very particular sense of humor, sense of interest, and he loves himself his daytime TV stories, and he loves the Maury show. So he hit me up and he was like, "Hey, would you want to go to the Maury Povich show?" And I'm like, "Sure, why not?" And it's like a daytime show. It's kind of like a classier version than Jerry Springer, but not terribly classier. And apparently, he got involved. He got in contact with the producers, and they said, "Hey, if you can get a huge group of people to show up at this meeting point at like 9 a.m. on a Wednesday or something like that, in just the middle of South Jersey, we're going to get a chartered bus, like the kind of like a giant bus that you would rent on like a school field trip or something that like plays movies and stuff. And we're gonna have it pick up all this huge group of people, and we're just gonna take you right to Baltimore, I think it was, and we're just gonna shoot an episode of the Maury Show. And um, when you ask a bunch of people to do that, this was right before the pandemic. When you ask a ton of people to do that, um, all of them say yes, but not as many actually will show up, especially because it's like, it's like 8 a.m. on a Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
And I was one of the handful of people who showed up. So maybe like 5 or 6 people showed up, and like we have this huge chartered bus, and they were mad. They were like, "We thought you were gonna, bring this many people," and Em was like, "I tried. I don't know." But no, they drove us. They, they drove us down to Baltimore. We watched the Maury show. They gave us free pizza. It was awesome. I just lost my mind at all of the absurdity happening. And I mean, the Maury show, whether it's Maury Povich, whether it's Jerry Springer, all of that, it's all pro wrestling. It's just on Maury, they just don't fall down. They don't hurt each other as much, at
There's no
least.
ring.
Yeah, exactly. It's wrestling without a ring. It's a very traditional throwback style of pro wrestling that dates back to the 1900s. I love it. So yeah, that was incredible.
Now, some people might have this question. Um, what happened on that episode? Was someone the father? Was someone not the father? How'd that episode go?
It's funny because so for all I know, he tells this to everyone, but he said that that was the first episode he's ever done where everyone he interviewed was telling the truth, that they actually weren't the father, that they actually didn't cheat, and all this, that, and the other. And it's since aired on TV. He told us it was the first time and the only time it's ever happened. I don't know if he was just saying that to be a great showman, but either way, he was a great showman, and we had an awesome time.
Now, what are some of your favorite places that you like to travel as as part of the wrestling business?
Sure. When I was with Impact, and early on, we were doing events in Universal Studios. That was awesome because I found that um, once you like start to talk to everyone, get to know everyone on set, everyone at Universal is really cool, and they're totally cool if you show up a couple hours early. And like we're on the back lots where they film movies and TV shows and whatnot, and like if you turn around, there's a gate, and right behind that gate is one theme park, and then behind you look the other way and there's another theme park. And like there's no guards or alarms or bells or whistles. They just are like, yeah, if you want to show up a couple early and just go out and have fun to the theme park, like cool. And that was one of the coolest experiences I've had in wrestling. Not only I'm a big Harry Potter fan, so being able to like go out in the Harry Potter world and just like spend hours there just hanging out and just absorbing it. But there's a gentleman who worked at Universal Studios who was our timekeeper. Who he took me on like a backstage tour kind of, and was able to just skip all the lines, just show me how everything worked, go through on a bunch of rides. That was incredible. And of course, anytime I'm in Mexico, I absolutely love it. I love the culture. I love the people. I love walking the pyramids. Everything about Mexico is wonderful.
What's your favorite food in Mexico?
My favorite food, I'll tell you, my favorite drink is horchata. I love it to death, and ever since drinking it once in Mexico, I now always keep it stocked in my fridge. It's like a sweet cinnamon rice milk. It's absolutely great. I Mexican cuisine is indescribably good. It's the homemade tacos especially are to die for. I once did a non wrestling, just a backpack tour of central Mexico for about 2 weeks, just going, campground to campground, Airbnb to Airbnb. Stayed at a few luchadors' houses along the way. It's a wonderful, beautiful place. I couldn't recommend it highly enough.
Sounds good. Maybe I'll put that on my bucket list. I'm only 16 and have no way of traveling yet. So,
Learn the language or find someone local who will help you be a tour guide, definitely, because it's there's definitely a learning curve to getting there. But I was terrified the first time I went, but I've come to love it now.
now, a few weeks ago in Indianapolis, Indiana, GCW put on a show called The Collective, where I think it was 11 different promotions from the area or out of the area came together and just put on one great weekend of wrestling. And you
Hmm.
were there to work some of those shows. What was the experience like there? It was kind of like the WrestleMania weekend, but in Indiana in September.
Yeah, it was definitely a substitute for WrestleMania weekend because when the lockdown happened in mid to late March, it was just weeks prior to WrestleMania. So that was for many of us. That's for everyone in pro wrestling. That's their biggest weekend of the year. Yeah, everyone is coming from all over the globe. You get to see friends that you haven't seen in forever. You get to work with people that you thought maybe you never have the opportunity to. It's an exciting thing, and the way it shut down, there's never a good time to shut down the world, but the fact that it happened right before our biggest thing was a big blow for all of us in the community. So it was exciting to see everyone to kind of get a do-over a bit, and obviously it's not the exact same as it would have been, but it was still wonderful. I was being really cautious. Like initially, WrestleMania weekend, I think I had 11 or 12 bookings in the course of 3 days I was supposed to attend, which is normally that's a month's worth of bookings. To do a month's worth of work in a weekend is wild. um, since everything got scaled back a bit, I got my schedule cut down to 5 shows, I think, in that weekend. So it was busy, but at the same time, many of us weren't staying or hanging around the chat for longer than we needed to, like because we're still in the midst of a pandemic. So um, I personally I showed up with my crew, that we all rode together and stayed together, all wore masks, went did our thing, then said hi, caught up with friends, always stayed socially distanced, left immediately after. We were all very careful about that. So was it the big WrestleMania weekend? It could have been, not necessarily, but it was still a really nice time as long as you were going there and being smart about things.
hmm Now, what was your favorite show to work?
Okay, so of course I love all of the events I attend because I love pro wrestling. I'm just happy to be involved. But my favorite event of the year is always Bloodsport. I love Bloodsport. I have been the head official for every single one that's ran. I was a big fan of the idea when they first unveiled it. I was the one who came up with the first draft of rules for Bloodsport, and every single Bloodsport event, whether it was initially Matt Riddle, now it's Josh Barnett. I always revise them and go over that with them prior to the event to make sure we're all on the same page. We're keeping the rules, changing this rule, that sort of thing. So it's very special to me. It's very challenging. It's not your standard pro wrestling event. It's much more like mixed martial arts, which it's not about being more or less difficult. It's just about being different. So it's a unique challenge that you don't get to always experience throughout the rest of the year working. So uh, it's very special to me. Really excited to be there for that, and I was thrilled to be in there for the main event. Of course, that probably the biggest match of my career, to be honest.
Yeah, that was my favorite. I only ordered 3 of the shows on Fight TV, but I was looking forward to Bloodsport the most, and it definitely delivered. It was worth paying for it. So,
Oh, absolutely. And what other shows did you order?
Shimmer and Effie's Big Gay Brunch on Saturday.
Okay, cool. I did both of those as well. How'd you like them?
They're good. I mean, Effie's Big Gay Brunch, it was awesome. Uh, when Effie had his match against Marco, I probably should have had that on in the living room when my parents were near me, because dildos were brought involved in that, and also my grandma walked in, so it was not good. um, but
It's not
then
exactly a family event.
yeah, but it was still good. And then Shimmer, that was awesome to watch too. And my mom, she really didn't like wrestling like a few years ago, and then I brought her to her first independent event in like January of 2017,
Hmm.
and ever since then she's like, oh, I recognize that person. Oh, they've been to that show that we went to. So she really enjoyed the Shimmer show. And yeah,
And
go
you know
ahead.
what? The wonderful thing about all three of those shows is all three of them were about empowerment.
Mhm.
Effie's Big Gay Brunch was about getting everyone from the LGBTQ plus community together and showing that, hey, we can wrestle too.
Mhm.
Shimmer was the exact same thing. They've been doing it for years with women's wrestling. And Bloodsport was about this alternative blood sport MMA style of wrestling that for years you could only get it if you watched VHS from Japan from the 80s and 90s, you know. And
Mhm.
now it's a genre of wrestling that's being celebrated. I think it's wonderful. All three of those great choices.
I definitely think next year when Bloodsport happens, hopefully it happens again.
Oh, I'm sure it
Um,
will.
I think Jean Claude Van Damme should be there,
I would
and
love if John Claude Van Damme was there. There's actually, I know right before the pandemic, the plan was to start running them more regularly
Mhm.
throughout the year. I don't know how regularly that is, if that's just a couple of times or what, but I am all board for that.
Yeah, I mean I watched the movie and it's definitely different than the professional wrestling style of it,
Yeah.
but I loved it. And once I saw Josh Burnett's Bloodsport at the Collector, I'm like, I have to get this. One show that I wanted to watch was Joey Janela's Spring Break, but I missed it from ordering it, so
Hmm.
because I
That
lost the track of time, but it's okay.
that was a really fun one. That was one of the most wild matches of my career. Joey Janela versus Ricky Morton. Ricky Morton, 64 years young and still putting on an absolute barn burner as if it was the 80s again. It was phenomenal.
Hmm. Yeah, it was awesome, and especially, I mean, I think everyone is on board when I say this. This pandemic sucks, and it was obviously shocking to see a news report that Indiana hit the highest COVID numbers that day of the start. But everyone went out there and just put on one hell of a weekend of wrestling. So,
Yeah, the thing is, I think a lot of people want to dismiss pro wrestling. Just right off the bat, they want to make fun of pro wrestling for what it is, or whatever. I think anthropologically speaking, when you look at the culture of pro wrestling, it's not just pro wrestling. It's not just a hobby for most. This is the people involved. It's their life. This is where they find community. Whether
yep.
you're watching it with your friends and family, whether you're making the rides and performing, this is very much a cultural and communal experience. It's what we all come together. It's what we all want to spend our lives being involved with to one degree or another. So missing it's a very important thing. It's not just some whatever. It's not a big deal. We'll get around to it. So I get it. I get the hurt of why of wrestling not being there, and I think that's the same for any and all activities, clubs. Uh, we shouldn't dismiss them. It's they're all just as important to the people who are involved with them every week. You know.
Hmm. Yeah. So, one question that I want to ask. So as a referee, and when this pandemic hit, obviously you said that you stay busy as
Hmm.
much as you can. Have you ever found yourself acting like you're the referee in everyday life situations, like when you go to open your fridge and it's open too long, do you like start a count, like one, two, or if you're like cooking something and you gotta make the pin of how many times you have to cut it open or something? Tell us.
Well, I guess the closest thing I can say to that is that I often feel like I'm being a babysitter for other adults. And that's kind of what your job is as a referee. You're babysitting these adults and making sure they don't hurt themselves or others too badly, outside of the nature of professional wrestling, at least. And I've often found that when you're running events or producing events, whatever, a lot of times people in professional wrestling have a sense of arrested development. They say that you're the same mindset and maturity level as when you entered the business, and so you have a lot of overgrown kids just playing together a lot of the time, it feels like. So yeah, in that sense, that I guess that would be the closest sense that I could relate to that. Sometimes it just feels like you're babysitting all of them, and you're just hoping that nobody's gonna hurt someone or get arrested or anything like that, especially on the road.
Now, do you remember your first? Obviously, you said that you wrote down every match that you have been involved in. Um, who were the first two people that you officiated a match with, and where are they now?
The first match I ever officiated was early June of 2008. I think it was June 6th. It was Kevin Cunningham versus Big Bear Borselli. They were both wrestling students who started at Force One around the same time as me. So we kind of all grew together. Like, while they were doing drills for cardio and whatnot, I was doing it right alongside them. When it got to the point that they were learning moves, I was often like the stunt dummy to do them on. They got to the point of putting them together, having matches, I was the referee for those training things, and that's kind of where me as a referee began. Was just they needed a ref in training, and I just took to it well. Um, so when they had their first match, everyone only felt it would be appropriate that I would ref it, like as a big student showcase for the company. Um, Unfortunately, they didn't hang around pro wrestling too much longer after that. I'm friends with both of them on Facebook still. I think within a year or two, Bear had left the business, and within probably 3 4 years, probably 3 years at most, Kevin Cunningham had left the business, and now they're just regular people. They still love pro wrestling, from what I can garner. They just aren't involved with it actively like that anymore. And you know what? As long as they're doing well, that's all that matters. But I'm sure had they stayed involved with it, they would have done great things because they're both very talented performers.
Now, I'm from Massachusetts, and one official that's closer to my area where I'm from and does the shows that I've gone to, Ref Gina Monty, aka Blue Shoes. That's what she goes by in this
Yep.
area. Um, what are your thoughts on her?
Jane's one of my best friends. I'm a pretty introverted person. I don't talk to a lot of people a lot of the time, which isn't because I don't love people or anything. I just keep to myself a lot, and I just stay focused on my work. And Gina is one of the few people I talk to probably every day, which is saying a lot. I consider her my top referee student that I've ever had. She's a natural when it comes to it. And more than being a natural at pro wrestling refereeing, she's just a very responsible adult in a world where, like we were talking about before, there's not a ton of them. So I have all the respect in the world for Gina.
Now, damn, I'm out of questions.
That's fine.
um,
One thing, if you were okay with chatting about real quick before I head out, was I actually just produced a audio documentary that if you have a second, I'd love to talk about that.
oh yeah, that's fine. Is there anything that you'd like to promote on this interview? Obviously, you can go ahead and mention that.
Yeah, sure. So I've always been a big writer. Storytelling is my thing, and I respect all forms of storytelling, whether it's writing, whether it's making a movie. When you watch a wrestling match, they're telling a story. When you look at a painting, that's telling a story. Um, and I like the weirder things. I like talking about like cultures, what people do and why they do it. And uh, one of the biggest things I've learned is that uh, it's really easy to make it seem like someone from a different place is doing something they're doing whatever they do for a weird reason. Uh, when I say that, I mean look at National Geographic, any culture outside. It's like, why did the British drink tea, or it can get more and more strange as you go along. Whether when you go look at the cultures of the South Americas, of Africa, of the Pacific Ocean, island communities, and I like looking at it and explaining why people do what they do. And you realize, even if they're people have weird ceremonies, have weird traditions, again, whether that's foreign or even just throughout the United States, the reason that they do those things is from a common feeling that we all have. if some people have weird burial rites, and it's easy to look at it and say it's so strange that they do it, but when you realize everyone does something because of they love this person, and that love doesn't extinguish at death, so I work with Ripley's Believe It or Not a lot as a contributor for there. And one of the things I was really excited to do was think of how I could take the stories that I write and take them to a different medium, and in some ways make them easier to digest, because not everyone wants to sit down and read, pages and pages of cultural notes.
Yep.
So during the pandemic, I decided to put together an audio documentary, which is basically a podcast about a fascinating story that I heard. It's like a horror story within pro wrestling circles. I'm not sure if you ever heard of Lou Thez.
Mm-mm.
Okay,
Sorry.
so no, you're fine, and that's the wonderful thing about being in 2020. You can go on YouTube and find out everything about him. Lou Thez was the professional wrestling champion throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, as we were moving away from just these live events to entering the realm of television. And he was the first American champion to go over to Japan after World War II. He did a lot of things to bring the wrestling community together domestically and internationally. And one of the things, uh, he was trained by George Stragos, who was an Olympian from the 20s and just like known as a no nonsense kind of guy who didn't have a lot of flair, didn't have a lot of personality, but he could hurt people. And there's a horror story from the 30s of him hurting another wrestler, and it was so bad that the wrestler lost their arm. And it's gone around in circles for decades of a tall tale, and I wonder what the true story is behind it, because they never give a lot of specifics. They don't say the full name or anything, and I kind of started following that trail and to uncover who was it that Thez's trainer wrestled, who did he hurt, how did he hurt him, how much of it was real, how much of it was just pro wrestlers telling stories, and most people didn't think it would. They just assumed it was a story lost to time. But I was able to team up with Jimmy Wheeler at the Professional Wrestling Historical Society, and we turned out all of these newspaper archives from the teens, 20s, and 30s and 40s, and figured out who this dude was and what actually happened. And along the way, I was able to speak to a few legends of professional wrestling. Gerald Briscoe, one of Vince McMahon's right hand men. Dr. Tom Pritchard, the inventor of the WWE developmental system, who was responsible for training The Rock and Kurt Angle. Lou Fisto, one of the pioneers of women being involved in independent professional wrestling. And I was able to not only figure out the truth of the story, but look at it through the lens, look at gatekeeping or bullying through that lens of how people bully one another in this business in the past and how it still occurs. And I was able to put together something I'm really proud of, and that was released on Apple Podcast recently. If you look up Tales from the Mat, you'll see the first episode there, Maimed, the Shooter, and the Ripper, which there's some bad words in there, so I'm not necessarily sure it's for kids. But as soon as you're 18 and you're comfortable hearing about a little bit of violence in the confines of professional wrestling, I would definitely recommend checking it out. I was very fortunate that I have a lot of voiceovers and cameos in there from tons of the top talent of independent wrestling today, including Anthony Green, who just signed to WWE in the last few weeks, just debuted on NXT. I was able to get him to come voice act for a bit in it, and it's a lot of fun. It's something I would love everyone to check out if they had the opportunity.
Well, I'll definitely look into it and check it out.
Awesome.
Sounds interesting. So, um, is there anything else that you like to promote on this interview? Social media, anything?
Sure. So aside from checking out the first episode, Tales from the Mat, I would love if everyone had the opportunity to check out Camp Leapfrog, Things That Go Bump in the Ring. One of the things about Camp Leapfrog is we don't like to tell what's going on ahead of time. We don't like to talk necessarily about everyone who's going to be there or what the matches are going to be. I'll just say it's a Halloween party at a pro wrestling campground, and things get spooky, and it's a lot of fun. And not only is there a lot of fun to be had in the scenes themselves and the matches themselves, I think there's a lot of fun in just watching some of your favorite independent professional wrestlers let their hair down and have a fun time. They're not in there thinking about we have to do this, that, or the other. We need to impress this person. We need to make sure this goes okay. It's a low pressure, hey, let's have a party together and have fun. And while we're doing it over the course of a day, let's film a movie and let's film a wrestling event and combine them into one. And that's going to be on IWTV this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, which anyone can check out if they use promo code Leapfrog for 5 days free. And otherwise, you can find me on social media at Ref Kris Levin, and that's Chris with a K because my parents are difficult. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as well. Feel free to say hi anytime.
Is there anything that you would like to ask me before we end this interview?
You know what? How long have you been doing interviewing? Because you've been doing an awesome job so far.
Thank you. It's going on a year and a half. In March it will be 2 years.
Oh,
So
that's great. And is this what you plan to do? Do you want to go to journalism school or anything like that?
I actually made my decision. I mean, I got 2 more years of high school because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
sophomore right now, but definitely, like, every wrestler's always told me have a backup plan. Like, wrestling will be there forever, but you don't want to be a professional wrestler and then get hurt and never wrestle again and not have a backup plan.
Mm-hmm.
So most people have told me go to college, go to school, finish school, have some type of making some type of money job regularly, and then get into pro wrestling. So I'm definitely following their advice, and journalism is something that I want to do. Sports interviewer. So
That's awesome. And you know what? So many people involved in pro wrestling started off in journalism as sports interviewers. And just for example, Blake Chadwick, the lead commentator for Camp Leapfrog, he went to school for sports journalism. He does broadcasting for all like legitimate sports for basketball and whatnot. And he was able to transition that and take his love for professional wrestling, take everything he learned from college and take it there. So that's an awesome thing. I mean, that's what I'm going to school for now as well. I go to University of Massachusetts Amherst Online, and their journalism program, if you're looking for an online one, is top notch. University Without Walls, it's called. That's what I
awesome.
do. I absolutely love it. And you're already ahead of the game because when I was your age, I had no idea what I wanted to go to school for. I knew I wanted to do something with storytelling, with filmmaking, something like that. I tried going to film school and it didn't work out. I just wasn't ready for it. Went back after a few years, got an associate in history, and now I'm doing a bachelor's in journalism. So uh,
Awesome.
you are doing now what I started doing around the age of 25 or 26. So you've got a decade on me. So that's awesome. Like keep up with it. If journalism is what you want to do, then pursue that. It's a great avenue to look at.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your time today. I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe. Follow him on social media. Listen to his audio documentary. I'm definitely going to listen to it because it sounds very interesting. Watch Camp Leapfrog on Thursday, and see you in the next interview, everyone.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.